I'm Mike Doran. I'm the director of the Center for Peace and Security in the Middle East at the Hudson Institute. And I am hosting today a distinguished panel of two to discuss the Abraham Accords. And we have on my immediate left, Ofir Akunis. He is the Minister of Science and Technology in the Israeli government. And next to him is Rob Greenway, Hudson's own Rob Greenway, but he's also the President and Executive Director of the Abraham Accords Institute for Peace. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you.
Minister, let's
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Let's start with you.
Yeah.
And can you just give us an assessment of what the achievements of the Abraham Accords have been and what the agenda is going forwards?
First of all, I'm for every peace treaty with our neighbors. This is the most important thing. To talk with our neighbors, to cooperate with them, and to sign peace treaties with them. We want it. I said it right here. I think it was even the same chair, September 2021.
We saved this chair for you.
You saved, so it's good. With the MK Rutlande, former AK Rutlande, during my visit to DC in September 21, we mentioned then 1 year to the Abraham Accords treaties. So this is the most important thing. We prefer it. We prefer peace on any other situation in our region. And I'm so very glad that the Bahrainians came, the UAE, Morocco. I will say a few words about my meeting with the Moroccan minister in the UN 3 days ago, and Sudan as well. Even though we did not, it's not finished yet, but it's on the right way. And we want more. And we want others to cooperate, to collaborate, and sign peace treaties. And so this is the main achievement, the fact that we signed the treaties with all of them, according to the Abraham Accords, after the signing with Jordan, that I'm very for, and with Egypt, of course. Now, I will give you some examples that you will understand that we are doing every day huge things with them according to the ideas of the Abraham Accords treaties. Let's talk about, I will give you two examples. The UN conference last week in New York. I talked with the Emirate Minister for Environment and Climate Change, and with the Moroccan minister that's responsible for water issues. And we talked about strengthening the ties between us, especially in water tech, because both of them are responsible for the water issue. As you know, we all suffer, all of us suffer from drought, all of us. So we need the Israeli water tech. And we had agreed upon that we'll work together to bring Emirates and Moroccan companies and to send Israeli companies to Morocco and to UAE and to cooperate and invest there, and they will invest in Israel. So this is the last two examples. By the way, I don't remember. I wanted to give you some details. Maybe you want to say a few words about these enormous numbers, with your permission, and you will read them to the audience. I'm talking about the trade. Okay. Yeah, please.
I'd be happy to read these enormous numbers. So
that's why I gave it to you.
Trade with the UAE in 2022, $2.59 billion. Trade with Bahrain in 2022, $12.7 million. Trade with Morocco, by the way, Morocco is very dear to our hearts here at the Hudson Institute. Yeah,
okay,
we noted your comment about Moroccan Sahara last week at the UN.
Yeah, you heard the speech. Good.
We're very happy about that.
I'm happy as well.
We like Morocco, and we think Algeria is a problem.
Okay.
Trade with Morocco in 2022, $55.7 million. And as Prime Minister Netanyahu said yesterday, the Abraham Accords economically have only scratched the surface. A few $1 billion of trade and investment is very impressive, but it is minuscule compared to the potential we can realize. It can grow 5 times or even 10 times.
Okay, that's what I said. I quote myself. I don't want to quote myself. Yeah, that's right. In an interview to Israel Hayom and in the Globe Summit, that that the numbers will be such, even less than you just read now. So it's a huge success? I think so. Please.
But let's, a couple of words about Morocco.
About Morocco?
Yeah, just because to us, it is dear to our hearts here.
So,
and it's interesting from an American point of view.
Of course.
Because there's a growing strategic relationship with the United States and Morocco. Just give
So
us a sense of how the larger context in which you see it.
So as I said, and then as you said, you can see the numbers of the Israeli investments in Morocco lately, including Sahara Morocco.
Moroccan Sahara.
Moroccan Sahara, that's right. Watergen, for example, Watergen. They're already there. And by the way, I met them right after the summit in the United Nations. They want to do more in Morocco, and the Moroccans want more from us. So we are, I think that, and we want to do, by the way, it's not only about water, excuse me. I want to be more specific. It's about agri-tech and food tech as well. And as water tech I mentioned already. And this is the most, let's say, specific issues that we want to cooperate and collaborate with Morocco and the others, as I said.
All right, great. Rob, let me turn to you to talk to us a little bit about how you see the Abraham Accords fitting into a larger American perspective on the region.
So appreciate you having me, and always a great opportunity to sit next to our good friend, Minister Akunis, who was Minister for Regional Cooperation when we negotiated the accords and was a strong partner and remains among the cutting edge for those in Israel that are advancing these relationships. I would say from the American perspective, it's always been about two things. The first is pulling our partners and allies in the region more closely together, and Israel as the center of it, being our principal investment and our strongest ally in the region for many decades and for the foreseeable future. And so I think materially translating that into something concrete is important. And the economic aspect of the accords that you just mentioned and the minister just spoke to reflect just the beginning, I think, of approaching the connections between the countries. Our logic has always been slightly different than that taken in '79 with Egypt and '94 with Jordan, in that the economic basis of agreement between the accords provides a rationale for security cooperation to follow. So you would defend an economic relationship. I'm not criticizing the landmark deals made and the logic behind them. They were exactly right and necessary at the time. But I think now our path is to presume and establish an economic foundation upon which every country would defend because it's critical to their future. And I think that's what we're seeing now. And the economic potential of $4 billion between the Accord member countries in 2022 is an increase from $600 million in 2019. But the real potential is going to climb further. And it's going to climb for two reasons. First is because ultimately, I think the nations within the Accords are going to become more integrated with each other and with the United States. And so the constellation of free trade agreements concluded now and in effect over the weekend, the agreement with UAE and also near completion with Bahrain. But there's a constellation of US agreements which already exist as well. All of that can be leveraged to integrate these countries more closely together and also to develop true potential. So you go from $4 billion to what should be $24 billion among existing Accord member countries in just a bilateral basis. But it jumps to $75 million if you do it on a multilateral basis, and you can get to $1 trillion by 2030 if you could integrate the entire region around the Accords as the foundation. And now, at the penultimate, I would say that the US logic is this is how we integrate our partners and allies, and this is how we constrain our adversaries, including China, including Russia, by having a positive vision for how we can incorporate and integrate our partners and allies more effectively for their benefit, and also, I think, for ours.
That's very interesting what you're saying, because you're depicting the Abraham Accords as something much more than just an improvement in relations between Israel and its Arab neighbors, but also integration of Arab neighbors with each other is part of the vision.
Absolutely, because intra-GCC trade historically has hovered well below 15%, and it's actually probably closer to 10%. There are a lot of reasons for it, but even countries that have never been in conflict with one another have never had enormous trade dependencies on one another. And I think the vision they all have is only going to be achieved if, in fact, there's greater regional integration. That's where the economic potential is, and I would argue that's where the real potential is between the Accords member countries, no question.
I want to add something. I just came from Athens from Greece. And actually the goal of the trip was to march in the March of the Living in Saloniki. It was 80 years to the part of the Jews, the Jewish community, to their murder in Auschwitz by the Nazis. But before Saloniki, I met 3 or 4 ministers in Athens. And all of them, once they know, of course, they want to strengthen the bilateral connections with Israel, but all of them talked about the Abraham Accords. Why? Because they can see Israel in the middle, Greece, and by the way, Cyprus, and Italy as well. Maybe we'll continue to Spain, but it's a regional cooperation. So Morocco and Spain, Italy, for now it's not Tunisia and Libya, but maybe in the future, Egypt, Israel in the middle, Jordan, and the Palestinians, and I talked about the Palestinians in my speech in the United Nations, as you said, and of course the Persian Gulf states and others. So we are in Israel in the middle of the Middle East, in the middle of the Mediterranean, and of course we talked last time, as far as I remember, maybe it wasn't here, but we talked about the gas pipe, the natural gas pipe from Israel to Europe, and of course to the other side, if it will be possible in the future, and a cooperation between, let's say, Emirate industry and the others to Europe. And actually, I think that we are I have to tell you, before we will talk about the threats on the Middle East, directly on Israel, I think that we are in front of a huge, huge opportunity. And I'm using the meeting to call to investors to come and invest in Israel.
These ministers you're talking to, these were all Greek ministers, or were they?
No, in Athens,
yeah.
in Athens, all of them from Greece, but in the United Nations, from India, from Morocco, from United States, I have to tell you, of course, and Barbados. And they want to also
Barbados?
Barbados, yeah. I want them to support Israel in the United Nations. So it was, and of course, the minister from the Emirates. That was the last meeting on Friday, almost in Friday afternoon. So I'm calling to all the business in the world, to businessmen in the world, come to invest in Israel, because this is the heart of the, let's say, they used to, in the 90s, I read a book, New Middle East. It was written by, no, really. It's not,
No, I'm sorry. This is Shimon Peres.
I read it.
We don't
You're
talk
right.
about that book here.
It's not a joke. I read the book. I used to read, books even of people that I'm not agree with, because to learn, I want to learn, and I read the book. It was like, something new and a huge breakthrough. So because of the terror attacks, actually the peace process then in the 90s actually collapsed for some time. But now I can tell you now, these days, that this is a new Middle East. Now, because of the peace, Abraham Accords treaties.
So I just got back from a trip to India, and I was surprised to hear them talking about the Abraham Accords. And I saw it from this reinforces everything you're saying, but I saw it from a different angle than I realized, because they told me, these are senior government officials, and they discussed I2U2, India, Israel, United Arab Emirates, United States,
of course.
and they discussed how happy they were with it, because historically they've had 2 problems. They've had problems. They have good relations with Iran, and they have to balance Iran with the Gulf states. But then they also had to balance their desire for a relationship with Israel and the growing defense cooperation they have with Israel and the Gulf states.
Yeah.
And that balancing act was difficult for them. And the Abraham Accords eliminated it, and it made them, it allowed them to deal with Israel and the Gulf states as a bloc.
Actually now, because of the treaties, India is much more closer to Israel. Instead of 7 hours of a flight, it can be 5 hours or something, even less, by the way. So everything, become closer, and you can we already cooperate with India for a lot of time. One of my first visits as a Minister of Science and Technology in the first term was to India. And then the Indian Minister of Science he told me, we want to learn from you how to be an high-tech nation. Quote. It's unbelievable.
So give us a sense, Minister, give us a sense of what your immediate agenda going forward is, both to strengthen the existing multilateral cooperation, but maybe to expand it. I know there's been a lot of talk about possible normalization with Saudi Arabia. I don't know if you're comfortable talking about that now, but whatever you can tell us about the immediate agenda.
So first of all, about Saudi Arabia and others, everybody will find our open hearts and open doors. Everybody. I'm talking about Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about others in the Far East and in the very, let's say, the closest neighbors. They will find our open doors. They just, they need to decide if they want it. And I think according to the, the numbers of trade between us and the Emirates and the Moroccans and the others, with Greece, with Italy, whatever, I think that if they will decide positive, it will be for their own good, not only for our own good, because we want it. For them, I don't want to be specific, by the way. There is.
I understand.
We are doing what we can.
So, Rob, you said something I thought was very interesting. You presented this as the economic foundation for a larger security, for a larger relationship, a kind of the basis for a security system of the United States. And you mentioned it. This wasn't exactly your words, but what I heard you say was, this is the American answer to China's Belt and Road. Is that a fair depiction of what you said? And if not, how do you see this with respect to the Belt and Road Initiative?
Sure, and look, it is accurate, I think, to say that once you have a beneficial trade relationship, you want to defend and you want to protect it. And I think it's only natural. If you don't have that, it's always, I think, in my estimation, a little bit artificial, because then you're defending something that doesn't exist. And I think it can become expensive on all fronts. But if it's mutually beneficial, then I think you can see mutual shared distribution of responsibility to protect and defend it. Second, if you look at the heart of it, China's Belt and Road Initiative is a way for them to obtain the resources required to sustain their growth and expansion. It's not necessarily for the mutual benefit of participants. And that, in practice, is what you're seeing, especially in the Middle East and in Africa, is you're seeing predatory practices where they're extracting resources for their own benefit, and the parties in question don't necessarily share in that benefit. And from our perspective, the Accord's completely different. The Accords provides an opportunity for mutual benefit, as the minister stated, for countries to reach their economic goals and objectives by working together and integrating more closely. And from India's perspective, and from Asian countries, you look at the Middle East as the principal transit point between the European and Asian markets. All goods and services that move through between those two, the world's largest markets, flow through the Middle East. So does a good portion of that which goes to North American markets. If you have a more integrated region, then goods and services can flow through in a much more efficient way than is currently possible, and in a way that benefits all participants. And I think that's the contrast. But you can't compete with an idea unless you have your own. And that idea has to have a substantive material benefit to participants. And I think from our perspective, having built the Accords, it was within our minds, and I think it's within the minds of its participants, to do exactly that, to work together to satisfy and achieve their own goals and objectives in a mutually beneficial way, which stands in stark contrast to what our adversaries are attempting to do.
And so how do you answer the question about what's the immediate agenda from your perspective?
I think there are two. In our conversations with counterparts in the Israeli government and the Accords countries as a whole, we have two objectives. First is demonstrate the benefit of the Accords to people now. Why is the agreement beneficial? And water and agricultural technology that the minister is prioritizing gets to exactly that point. How do people in individual countries, Morocco and in Israel and in Sudan and in the UAE and Bahrain, Egypt and Jordan, how do they benefit now? Project Prosperity is another example of this. It's demonstrating the benefits to individual citizens. And second is encouraging others to join, because they can see the benefits that membership in the Accords are already providing to its people. So the beginning of trade, the beginning of these agreements is just the start. Seeing the benefits will encourage others to join. And I think those two areas are interconnected, and that's the priority.
I want to tell you something. I think Rob was right. The economy it's the base to the peace and not the opposite. And I will give you an example. We signed the Oslo agreements in 1993, and then the Paris agreements. They were part of the Oslo agreements, and then the second Oslo agreements, et cetera, et cetera. And the situation, I think the idea, we want treaties with our neighbors, as I said, and I will continue to say because I believe in it. Okay, the first prime minister that signed a peace treaty with an Arab country and an Arab neighbor, it was Menachem Begin, my leader, the leader of the Likud. So we believe in it. And we voted for the peace with Jordan, even though in the past we said, we saw different views with them. But the idea is that the economy will lead us to the peace and not the opposite. You will sign an agreement, and then you'll sign. Okay, you'll sign it here, right? By the way, right here in the White House. But nothing will happen, okay? Like what happened in Oslo, right after the Oslo agreement, the opposite happened, okay? We found ourselves in a tragic situation of a lot of terror attacks by the Hamas and others and the Islamic Jihad and the others. And the idea of the Abraham Accords are to begin with economic cooperation, with joint projects, and then the seed to the peace treaty will be the economy. And they think that this is the right path. And as you said, if with India we already have the treaties and the MOUs and the declarations of principles and all the other issues of foreign affairs relations. But others wants to cooperate. And I want to tell you that they asked me, I will be very honest, with your permission. They asked me in Greece if there will be an influence to the change of status with Turkey. And I said, no. The answer is no. We can talk with the Turkish to cooperate with them, economy, trade, other issues, flights, of course. And let's say, the bond with Greece is stronger than ever. And Cyprus and Italy, I am supposed to travel to Italy in the beginning of May, and it's great. It's great, actually, it's good. It's good for all of us.
I didn't understand the question that the Greeks put to you about the Turks. It was
Because
is the improvement of relations with Turkey going to
Israel,
lead
Turkey.
Israel to downgrade the relations with Greece? Is that what they were asking? Or?
They asked if there will be a change because of the fact that in the last, let's say, 1 year, something like that, there is a positive change in the attitude of Turkey and toward Israel. A positive change.
Yeah.
And they asked about it, and they said, no, this is one path, and this is the other path. And it's good for all of us.
Now, you yourself, I know from your bio, your family is from Thessaloniki, right? That's why is that why you were at this
the March of the Living,
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you personally retain a lot of personal connections to Greece and so forth?
No, I have to tell you that in the beginning I met the Greeks during the G2G forums, heading by Prime Minister Netanyahu in my previous, when I served as a Minister of Science and Technology between 2015 and 2020. And then I met them, and we started to cooperate. It wasn't because of my grandfather and grandmother immigrant to Israel 90 years ago. It's good for them. It's good for them because they saved themselves. And I want to tell you something about the issue of the threats against Israel. If someone telling you that he wants to destroy you, you better believe him. You better believe him. They said it then in the 30s, and now the Iranians are saying it. So you better believe them. Prepare yourself. And I think that, and I'm always saying it, in Greece and in my other meetings in the United Nations conference lately, and when they are seeing me in Israel, I have a lot of meetings. In the last 2 months, by the way, not as an opposition member, as a minister. And I'm always saying to them, to all of them, you should stand strong against Iran, not weak, and not, to say, okay, they are saying. No, they are not saying, they are doing, and they are doing it, okay? They want to do something in the end. So the European countries, the middle Satan, according to the Iranians, they should know that they want us, the little Satan, and then the middle Satan, and then they want you, the Americans, the big Satans, in their point of view. So we need to prepare ourselves to the prosperity from one hand and for the threats in the other hand.
So as Minister of Science and Technology, let's assume that this government lasts until the end of its term. You may not be aware, but there's a bit of a crisis in Israel right now.
I'm aware.
So you're over here.
Believe me that I'm aware. Actually, I asked I want to be honest with you, we were talking on Friday morning to maybe to come back to Israel before weekend. I said that we already dated with you.
You made the right decision. This is much more important than...
No, it's very important what's happening in Israel, and I want to tell you that I'm calling to all of us, the Israelis, because we are one nation, to calm down, There is a debate. It's part of the democracy. Everybody should calm down right now, because we are getting the news alerts, and it's very unstable in Jerusalem, around the Knesset, and in Tel Aviv as well, my city, and other places. Calm down. We will solve everything if we will talk between ourselves. If we can talk with our neighbors and to sign peace treaties with our neighbors, we can talk among ourselves. And we will do it. We will do it. And I think that the quiet will be in our beautiful kind of state and country before the Pesach.
You know, I'm thinking about it now. Maybe we need, now that you have the Abraham Accords, maybe the UAE should come and do some mediation between the Jews. You think?
I don't know. I think that we can solve the issue. I'm talking about the judicial reform. Between ourselves, all of us can talk. We're in the same building. It's the Knesset building, the Parliament building. The Prime Minister's office is 5 minutes walk from there, and the opposition leader is staying in the building in the Knesset. The Supreme Court is in 500 meters from the other side of the Knesset. It's all around, and we must talk immediately. I'm saying it here, immediately, right now. I don't know what is happening right now in the Knesset. They're still voting on the budget. By the way, this is a very important thing. We need a stable budget for the year of 2023 and 24 as well, because we need the economy to be stable. And with all the international influences on our economy, the inflation, the rate, and all the other issues, it's not only in Israel. Israel is not an island anymore. We used to be in the 70s, in the 80s, in the beginning of the 90s, but we opened the markets. We are part of the international market in economy, the stock exchange, the other issue, the investments, and the rate and the inflation. So we are doing it. It's very good that we will approve the budget. We approved it 3 weeks ago in the cabinet. I voted for, of course. By the way, a peak of all times in the Ministry of Science and Technology budget, and I'm so very glad and proud.
Just for the benefit of the viewers, this is going to go out in a couple of days, so we're doing this on Monday morning. But let's assume, all joking aside, let's assume that this government goes to the end of its term.
Yeah.
What do you, as the Minister of Science and Technology, in the context of the Abraham Accords, what are the things that you specifically want to achieve? What would be a successful term for you?
I will tell you. First of all, we should decide. We started to think about it in the committee, in a special committee that I'm the chair for science and technology in the cabinet, about the prerogatives and the priorities of the, let's say, Israel economy, and not economy, science and technology for the next few years. The AI is very important to us. The quantum computers, and we are already cooperate with the United States, and you know it, and BIRD and BARD and the other foundations, with the EU as well, the Horizon, as you know, program, you know it from close. And I think that the food tech, water tech, and agri-tech, and all the last three, because the climate changing, they will be, the AI, the quantum computers, and let's say the food tech, agri-tech, and water tech, we'll put them in one basket. They will be in high priority to us, and I want to see achievements, more investments, and I want the next generation to deal with. So my meaning is that we will give the opportunity to all the Israelis to be part of the Israeli wonder of science and technology. So we will bring the science and technology courses and scholarships and studying, and even in the premier schools.
That's
so
what
in cooperation with the Ministry of Education, actually all of them, Druze, Arabs, Jews, ultra-Orthodox, seculars, all of them will be part of the wonder, and we are supposed to restart the science basket from the beginning. Unfortunately, the previous government erased the program I led in the previous government, and we will give actually a lot of money to the Israel's municipalities that they will deal with science, technology, robotics as well, cyber courses, computer per child, etc., etc.
The agritech is where I saw real excitement in India. They were excited about the idea of UAE investment in Indian agriculture with Israeli science and technology.
You know, I must tell you, Rob knows it from very close. The drought in the Middle East it's an issue. It's not only the Greeks talked with me about it. The Swiss ambassador talked with me in Israel, in Tel Aviv, in Israel. We talked about it. The Italian ambassador and the Italian government wants to deal with, because it is a huge problem. And it's not a problem of, there is no rain only in Tel Aviv. No, there's no rain in Ramallah as well. And if there's no rain in Jerusalem, there's no rain in Rabat Ammon. Okay? And everything is, we're becoming a one big desert. The desert was until Be'er Sheva, okay, in the south. And from Be'er Sheva, it became, other, let's say, another weather. More European weather. Now it's most of the country is like desert. So we want to cooperate. And about the others that want to be a part of it, I wish.
Rob, let me ask you about back to this China question, because it looks to me that the idea of decoupling the Chinese economy and the American economy is looking like more and more like a dream. They actually got more integrated during COVID than they were before, during all this discussion of decoupling. But again, it seems to me, in the areas that the minister has been talking about, like AI, there will be a decoupling. And some of the high-end technology, there's going to be a complete decoupling. And what you're describing is a possibility of a kind of exclusive American technology zone. At the same time, we have a problem here, though, because a lot of the Arab countries are making special relationships with China. So how do you see that unfolding, and do you have an agenda with respect to that?
Well, I think first, as a matter of principle, and we've talked about it on a number of different fronts, the problems we face, drought, water security, food security as a result of the Russian illegal invasion of Ukraine, which has had enormous disruption to the already fragile global food markets. Technology, these problems are all larger than individual countries have the capacity to solve by themselves, with almost no exception. We have a natural advantage in that Israel's already a partner. A lot of the countries in the region, most within the region, are already our historic partners, the same in Europe. We have these intrinsic advantages. The difference is that we're not leveraging them, I think, in a way that makes the greatest deal of sense for us and for them. And I think it almost makes sense to look back at 5G, which was the sort of, and still is, an area where there's enormous competition for all kinds of reasons that has commercial and security implications. And so if you look at it, China has invested in this, and that's why in many ways they had an advantage. And we were at a disadvantage. And you have very few countries outside South Korea, Finland, and the United States to a certain degree were working on communications infrastructure, telecom infrastructure. Well, the question is now, not 5G, but what is 6G?
6G.
And who's working on it now? The Chinese are investing enormous capacity toward this themselves. Well, the question is, will the United States leverage our relationship with our partners and allies, which are, in many ways, technologically far more advanced? Are we going to work together to come up with a solution to the next? And I think the answer is we should, but I don't know that we are. And so we have an intrinsic advantage. And in my mind, we need to leverage it. And our partners and allies, I think, together with the United States, could easily outcompete.
Leapfrog over them.
There's no question about it, which was the case historically, right? So it's only actually a new situation where we're confronting a threat to that supremacy. And I think now we just have to work towards it a little bit differently. The real answer, though, is that the United States can do it, but we can do it more efficiently with our partners and allies. And again, this is where our partnership and relationship with Israel is central, and the region, because they're also looking for a solution, and they prefer it to be ours. But we have to actually have one on the table to compete with Huawei in this case. And I think the answer is, at this point, still undetermined. But we have an advantage.
Okay,
I
I
want
think,
to- yeah, that's
I
right.
think
I
you
want
have
to-
to go, but if
I
you
have
was
to
going
go
to give you the
because
last word here.
I will tell you why. We want to strengthen the ally with the United States. We always want it. I am, one of the huge supporters, and I want to do it now with NASA. And my next meeting is with the NASA Director General. It will be the first meeting with actually he's new. I met his predecessors, and I will meet him in a few minutes. It's not very far from here. So we are doing it, and I think that the involvement of the United States is very, very, very important under any administration. You know that peace treaties signed by President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu and the others. But I know that the current administration supports the Abraham Accords so much. Why I know? Because I'm talking with them. We are talking with the ambassador in Israel, in Jerusalem. He's in Jerusalem. We should remember that it's in Jerusalem, and it's important as well. And with other senior Americans, I should travel here again.
Rob is smiling with pride when you say
Jerusalem. Of course, because it's a huge pride.
Not all of our viewers know that Rob played a role in moving.
No, I know, and we appreciate it so much. The event in Arnona neighborhood in May 2018 was one of the, when the Americans actually opened the embassy in Jerusalem with the American flag above the skies of Jerusalem. This is not obvious, my friend. That was one of the greatest moments of the state of Israel from 1948. And I want to thank you again. And I'm always smiling like Rob smiles a few minutes ago when I see the flag above the sky, the American flag above the sky of Jerusalem. But as I said, this is bipartisan issue. The idea of the Abraham Accords is bipartisan issue, and I'm so very glad, and will continue. I'll continue as a Minister of Science and Technology. The others as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is dealing with agriculture, environment, transportation, and energy, of course, and heading by Prime Minister Netanyahu. So now you are staying here and with
No, we're going to say goodbye to you.
Thank
Yeah,
you very
but
much.
thank you. We
Thanks
know
a
you
lot.
have a very, very
No, I
busy
need
schedule
I will tell
at
you.
a difficult
I
moment.
need to catch a train and then the flight. So the train between DC and Newark, I think that I'll catch the train. But what will be I hope that what happened with the flights?
And we hope when you get back, there'll be an airport there to greet you.
No, the airport will be.
We hope there will be people in the
That's
airport.
right, the people to let's say that I can use. Thank you
Always a
very
pleasure.
Thank
much.
you very much.
Always a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Rob.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
very much. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And I hope to be here soon.
Okay,
It's
great.
my second time here, and it's always a pleasure.